Welcome to Broadcast Astrology, Insight for Humans.
This is Lisa Pesnichek.
And I'm Sarah Beckner, and we're here to deep dive into the fascinating world of astrology.
We offer blind chart readings, interviews with notable guests, and much more.
So keep listening as we bring you Insight for Humans.
Hello, we're here with Bryan of Oracular School of Astrology, and we all had the good fortune of attending the Northwest Astrological Conference last week. And Mychal, I don't know if you realize, but everyone was singing your praises behind closed doors. So I'm glad we have this opportunity to connect with you. You've been such a pivotal teacher for so many of us. And I had been studying astrology for some time before starting Oraculos. And there's something about your methodology that really grew me up as an astrologer and made me a professional. And I'm just so grateful for that. And I think it's because Oraculos really gave me the scaffolding, like the bones, to feel really confident about what I was doing. And astrology is an art. It will continue to evolve. I will grow. I'll add things. But you really pushed us out there in a way that I think grew us all up. And as astrology becomes more popular and becomes a part of the common social parlance now, there's so much interest in it. I wanted to get your opinion on how do people learn this and how you learned it, what your path was, and what your recommendation is for people. How do we start to integrate this? And for people who are new to astrology, what is the path?
Well, thank you so much, Sarah and Lisa, for having me here today. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy to see what you all have created here with your podcast. And thank you for the things that you've said. I think you all know that I tend to not know people's thoughts and opinions in the world, and because my nose is always to the grindstone. So I didn't know that people were calling my name behind closed doors. So it's nice to hear, because it oftentimes feels as if my work in the community goes unnoticed. So to your question regarding what was my pathway of entry into astrology, it was the Kabbalistic Tarot. And I want to now take the time to really talk about the tarot more, and just more strongly and more squarely, so that people can actually hear me when I say this, that it's the tarot that made me into the astrologer I am today, more than anything else. And I started studying astrology by accident because my initial point of interest was the Kabbalistic Tarot. That was the reason why I started doing everything. I wanted to be able to use those cards to tell the future. And after reading The Idiot's Guide to Tarot, I realized that there must be more than that. If these cards have been around for as long as they've been around, there must be a considerable amount more than The Idiot's Guide to Tarot. So I started to search, and one of the things that I've just been, I guess, divinely blessed with has been the gift of discernment. And the gift of discernment, it allowed me to find my way towards a more classical approach to tarot practice. And a lot of people debate me when I say classical, because I'm referring to the work of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which really created these strong links between the Hebrew alphabet and the three qualities of nature, being Mercury, sulfur, and salt, and the 7 classical planets and the 12 signs of the zodiac. It was really the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn that did that that did that overlaying of Western mystical, astrologically based thought on top of the tarot, making it into what we now call Kabbalistic Tarot. Whereas more classical iterations of the tarot didn't necessarily make those connections. But for me, when I say traditional tarot practice, I'm referring to tarot as it was in the early 1900s, based on the work of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And as a result of that, I just got catapulted headfirst into this world of classical astrology that I really had no interest in at the time. But it was necessary to understand that world in order to understand the tarot from this perspective. And So I fell head first in really great books about Kabbalistic tarot, really great books about the Kabbalah, really great books about the connection between Kabbalah and astrology, and the tarot and Kabbalah, and therefore the tarot and astrology. And that was such a formative part of my training that I can't imagine being who I am today without that. And the reason for that is because the tarot is a pictorial book of 78 pages. And each of the images on the tarot is meant to convey this astrological profundity and meant to convey one of the titanic forces that has formed our universe and made it into what it is from a spiritual perspective. And so the cards of the tarot aren't just these, picture cards that tell you you're going to be the tall, dark stranger. The cards of the tarot are all meant to be these hieroglyphical depictions of the forces of nature in dynamic action. And so it's because of that, and it's because of that basis that I began to think in images. I began to process information visually and imaginally. And that aided me in such a way so that when I eventually came to a pure astrological practice, I had already created this treasure house of images within my mind, this treasure house of astrologically rooted images within my mind that I was able to superimpose onto my burgeoning astrology, basically. And as a result of that, I've always had a depth of insight into astrological interpretation that I think a lot of people find quite unusual and quite extraordinary, because my forming of that ability was done within another realm of Western mysticism that is rooted in pictures. And I was able to transpose those pictures onto astrology, because one of the challenges with astrology is that it's hard to understand because there are no images when you look at a birth chart. There's the glyphs of the planets. And as you all know, I like to see a black and white chart. And a part of why I like to see a black and white chart is because this world of color and this world of images exists inside of me. So I don't need for the glyphs on my screen to be colored, because the entire kaleidoscope of colors and images and sounds exists inside of my mind as a result of my Kabbalistic tarot training. And I find that a lot of astrologers struggle in learning astrology and understanding astrology because it's hard. It's very hard to make the glyph of Saturn mean something. It's very hard to make the glyph of the sun mean something unless you have a deeper training in those things, and unless you have images that you can transpose or transfix onto those black and white glyphs of the planets or the signs or anything. So that was really my introductory study in astrology. And from there, I started a client practice at a very early age. I was 12 years old, 13 years old, giving readings in my aunt's nail salon. And that was a very interesting part of my life. And I have more to say about that. But essentially, that's how everything began. And then from there, I went on and I started a professional practice. I was 15 years old, giving paid readings. I was 16 years old, putting myself through university with the consultative work I was doing. And so by the time as I found my first quote unquote teacher, I was already a seasoned practitioner to a very large degree. And we could talk more about that if you want to know more about that later.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's so fascinating that that's where you came from, because having been a student of yours for several years now, your teaching style is so rigorous, and it really creates this functional and tangible way to use astrology. And I love how you're constantly using the metaphor of it's so easy to drown in astrology, and you have to find dry ground in order to navigate a chart. And how did you get to the point where you're doing astrology that has all of these images and pictures, into bringing it into this form, this really useful form that I know for Sarah and I has changed our practice fundamentally? How did you reach that point?
When I tell my astrology story, so little of it has to do with astrology, because what you're referring to is a fundamental orientation to life that exists in the Caribbean. And in the Caribbean, in our education system, from where in K5, just like kindergarten, straight up, we are fed this particular message that says that the world expects nothing of you. When you say that you're from the Bahamas, or you say that you're from Jamaica, or you say that you're from Cuba, or you say that you're from Haiti, the world has this internal orientation towards who we are as Caribbean people. And this doesn't even have to do with Black people, white people, whatever, just our region of the world as the West Indies. In the Caribbean, the world has a particular understanding of who you are. And that understanding isn't one that expects for the fastest runner in the world to come from Jamaica. It's not one that expects for one of the leading online astrology schools to come from the Bahamas, or it doesn't expect these things. So you have to prove them wrong. And I think that so much of my life has been built around this, because our education system in the Caribbean is built on creating the best students, the best scholars, the best. And that is something that occurred to me in kindergarten, in primary school, in high school. And they always said to us, in America, the education isn't like this. In America, nobody cares really if you thrive or if you fall, because the classes are so full. The university hall has over 100 students, whereas our class has probably 15 students. So we want to make sure that you end up being the best that you can be wherever you go. And that narrative followed me into university. Once again, I was in university for mass communication, and it was the exact same thing. It was, hey, you all have a privilege to be sitting down in a lecture hall with 20 students and one professor, and the professor knows all of your names, and you should take advantage of that, because if you were in an American-based university, this would not be the case. And so I think I took that for granted for a very long time. And then I moved to the States, where I started interacting more with America. And I was like, whoa, it's such a culture shock in terms of how education is delivered in the States, particularly astrological education. It was really an eye-opener for me, because in my mind, it was like, how can you give somebody a certificate with your name on it if you don't know that person's name? How can you even claim that these students are yours if you don't know anything about them? And so that was a big, that piece of the pedagogical piece is a Caribbean thing. And then transforming that into the classroom, that went from, just being a student in the Caribbean to also being a dancer in the Caribbean, where my dance training took place. And I trained primarily in Cuba and Jamaica. And my artistic director of the company I danced with in Jamaica, Lacadco, she also, Lantoinette Steins, also said to us, people don't really expect that much from you. And she said, it's one thing for you to be applauded by the people from your church or by your family members, because they're supposed to applaud you. They're supposed to cheer you on. It's another thing to be applauded when you go to New York City and you're dancing and you're performing in the Joyce Theater in New York and you get a standing ovation there. And she said to us that we need to practice and train for that level of applause. And that's something that I took into my astrology teaching as well, because it's one thing for us amongst ourselves, amongst our peers, to say, oh my God, you're such a great astrologer, blah, 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 blah. But it's another thing entirely for regular people. It's another thing entirely for regular clients who you have in your exams to say, wow, that reading was really accurate and concrete, and it spoke to things that actually happened in my life. And whoa, that reading changed my life, and I was able to understand it. And I think the astrological community tends to be very inbred insofar as we talk to each other. We don't really have friends outside of the astrological community. So we don't really understand how unintelligible our language is. And neither do we understand how unuseful a lot of the things we learn actually are, because we learn astrology amongst ourselves. We give readings amongst ourselves. We never have the opportunity to have real clients in the room because we're also fixated on reading celebrity charts. So we don't actually know how the reading lands for real people. And so it's just things that for me, I think are just very simple and very easy to see, are just things that I think in general, if we look at how astrology is taught I say America because this is where I live at this moment, but I think if we look at how a lot of astrology is taught and conducted, it just these things that I feel are very obvious just don't occur to other people. I think one of the examples for me is that I am a guest lecturer at a very popular astrology institute outside of Oraculos, and several of them. And one of the spaces that I taught at in the past, previously, I told them how I wanted the exams to be conducted. And I said, I want for the students to all present, and they're all going to have 10 to 15 minutes of presentation. And that's how I'm going to assess what they've learned in their course with me. And and somebody like on the Zoom call laughed, and she was like, really? You're going to sit down and watch all of those students present for 10 to 15 minutes? Who has the time for that? And I said, I have the time for that, because if you're calling me here to teach this course, how else am I supposed to evaluate what the students know if I'm not going to sit down and watch the students present? And so it has been shocking to me what qualifies as astrological education truly in the States. And ultimately, the last thing I think that's really important for me at Oraculos and in how I teach astrology and in how I approach astrology is this quote I heard from Arthur Mychal, who is the founder of the Dance Theatre of Harlem, which is a very prestigious dance school in New York that I'll be teaching at in July. And he said to someone once, go out in the world if you want to study classical ballet, but come to me when you're ready to be a professional ballet dancer. And that really stood out for me very strongly, this difference between studying something and being something. And that's kind of my same statement within the astrological community. And that's been my statement within the astrological community for years now. From the moment I gave my first blind chart reading online, the underlying statement has always been, study astrology wherever you want to study it. If you're ready to move into a concrete approach to astrology that is accurate and astrology that works, come to me when you're ready to do that. And so that's how all of these pieces come together. Very little of it is astrological. A lot of it comes from my training as an artist, as a dancer, as a student, everything. And I think I bring those qualities to the astrological community at this moment. And I think that that's what people see, when they say, oh, wow, that's so amazing that he does. It isn't really the astrology that's working through me to produce those results. It's all of these other factors that influence how I approach my practice and my teaching and what I'm passing on to the next generation of students who study with me.
It's interesting you say that, because early on in studying with you, I wondered if you were a student of Kabbalah, because of the integrity and the ethics and the rigor and the way you push yourself and work against your resistance and the way it's like we get to see you live time, continue in your own process to grow and push and ask more of yourself. I didn't realize that was a cultural thing, but, and I don't know if how much you studied Kabbalah with the Tarot, but I also didn't really know that the Tarot was the beginning for you. And I think that's so important, because this is a symbolic language. And somehow at the end of the day, no matter what oracular tool you're using, it is about building relationship with the symbols. And so you really have to flesh out these three-dimensional, living, vibrant archetypes in your head before you can start to engage with people and use that language. And
were you all a part of, and sorry to cut you, Sarah, but were you and Lisa, a part of the group of focus students where I gave you all the lucid dreaming homework to do from the very first class you had with me? Did I give you all a lucid dreaming assignment where you would record your dreams? No?
No, we didn't do that.
No?
Mychal, I feel cheated.
I know.
Not too late.
I did your dreaming class.
Right. Okay. So what I used to do, and I'm bringing this up because of what Sarah said about this symbolic inner landscape and this relationship to the symbols. At the very first time, from the beginning of Oraculos, which is, I think, back in 2015, I think I bought my first tarot deck in 2005. And then in 2015, Oraculo started in the Bahamas with just one student, which then turned into 3 students, which then turned into a lot of students locally in the Bahamas. But an assignment I always gave was a lucid dreaming assignment where during FOCA, during our Foundations of Classical Astrology course, which is the first semester, I always gave people a dream partner who they paired up with and a lucid dreaming assignment where they would record their dreams every night and then go hop on a call with their dream partner so that they could have an accountability person to share their dreams with. And I think the semester that you all joined, I probably stopped that because the previous semester, somebody complained about the fact that, because people complain. One thing that happens in the rifle is people complain a lot. And somebody complained that, oh, this feels so personal and I don't want to share my dreams with people and da 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 da. And I was like, oh my God, kill me now. And so I stopped it. And apparently the semester that I stopped it was the semester before you all came. But it was it's such a real thing of getting you in the symbols, because I realized that there was no way for me to teach my students tarot as a part of their astrological training. It just didn't make sense. I needed to give them their own internal symbolic landscape to work with throughout their 2 years of studying with me. And why am I saying that? I'm saying that because the lucid dreaming was my replacement of the Kabbalistic tarot in their education. So I'm sorry that you all missed that.
Yeah. Yeah. As you're talking just about how you run things and to address some of the complaints you get, I would not change what you do.
No, people complain all over the
No.
place.
And the reality is that there are lots of options out there. There's lots of availability for, if you want to learn astrology in a passive way, watch lectures, read books, and do your own thing and not have anybody looking over your shoulder. That is out there. The
Mhm.
thing you do, and I don't know that anybody else is doing what you do, is, it's very interactive. Yeah, you do know what's inside of your students because you call on them, you participate with them, you have conversations, you watch them present. You make us do practicums where we take these new techniques out into the world and we do them 25 times, which I think is a big piece of my journey in terms of launching me. Not just because it brought people in through the door, which it has. Like now I'm on seeing people from the 3rd year of solar returns, and that was all established in your practicum, back in the day. But also because it helped me build a body of evidence and knowledge in my own mind through my own experience. And that is something I think that as people embark on this journey of astrology, is really important to keep in mind, because you will get a lot of techniques and a lot of people's opinions but ultimately you have to try it out. You have to test it. And I think there's a piece of that with your school too, like that primes us for research, for really doing our own research and thinking about things in those terms. And you build that data within yourself. And that's what has grown us up. And it's amazing because I don't think anybody else is doing it. And I'm just so grateful. We're all so grateful.
Yeah, and also watching one another grow too, how you encourage us to come. We're all required to watch each other's exams, and a lot of people show up even for our final exam when we haven't been in class for a while. People still show up, and it's all a learning process, and the community that provides. The motivation of your students, Mychal, is really exceptional. At NORWAC last weekend, 4 of us, I think, were all applying to present next year. And I think that that's really rare. Sarah and I have been in different groups of astrologers, and I know I haven't seen that level of self-confidence and proficiency and the desire to take whatever each of us has and put it out into the world. And I think that you've really primed us. And for some reason, it's coming to my mind, like my kids go to Montessori school and they're required to present their research projects from a very young age. They're constantly getting out there and speaking to their class and presenting things so that once they're older, they're ready to give presentations and they're not scared of putting themselves out there. And I think that that's
Mhm.
part of what you do for us as well, is by making us uncomfortable constantly in class or having us do these exams where we're like, why do we have to do this? But it's so
Mhm.
useful in these practicums where we have to work with so many people. And as Sarah was saying, that's largely what made me the astrologer that I am today. So
Mhm. I mean, and thank you for that. Thank you both for that so much. And I just want to see amazing. I want to participate in the creation of a generation of amazing astrology. And I think that amazing astrology is concrete. I think amazing astrology is event based. And I think that after years of us just hearing the mythology and the personality and the sun, moon, and the rising and the past life and the present and all the things, I just think that at this point, there's a real starvation in the world that people have that they don't even know that they're starving for concrete event-based astrology that just punches them in the guts and just confronts them with the realities of what is occurring within their life right now. And someone said to me once when I was starting to interact with the American astrology scene, because before that I didn't even know. I think when I became aware of UAC, I was still in university in Jamaica, and there was a UAC that was happening maybe in 2012 or something, and I saw the ad for it, and I was like, oh my God, these people have a conference. Because at that point, I was the astrologer of Jamaica. I was the tarot reader of Jamaica. Jamaica is a country with several million people in it, and I was the astrologer in the country. I was a tarot person in the country, which is wild. But it's also a product of just what life in Jamaica is like. You don't hear people talking about astrology, at least not then. Today it's more common, but at the time it wasn't. And I'm saying all of that to say that my first UAC I became aware of in 2012, and then the UAC that I actually attended was in 2018. And it was so fascinating to go to the talks and to see the people do the things and to be like, I should be speaking here. Like I know enough. This is my first UAC, my first time in America in this capacity, and there's no reason why I'm not speaking in this space. And I think that that's what catapulted me to create Oraculos as I've created it today, because I saw and heard a particular style of astrology being repeated in every room I went to at UAC. And I said, I have something that's distinctly different than this, that I have to offer. And I know that if I share what's within myself with a group of astrology students and they go and take that out into the world, they'll be extraordinary in their chosen profession. And that's what we did. And that's what's happening. And so I'm very happy to hear that you all are applying to speak at conferences, because you all have been through far more torture and suffering and pain. And I know that I'm that way. I know that I am the exact type of person who you all have experienced, is exactly who I know myself to be. But a part of that is because I know what's on the other side of that process. And I know the sort of confidence you will have within yourself at the other side of that process. So fine, the practicum feels like it's never going to end. Oh my God, he's come up with another final exam. Oh my God, where's my diploma? Sure, but here we are. And I'm so proud of the two of you. And my pride in people is never based on the following they have or the podcast that they have or the anything that they have. I'm so unimpressed with those things. My pride in people, my pride in astrologers is seeing the content and the quality of their work. And you just had your final exam with me the other day, Lisa, and I was so impressed. I was so deeply, deeply, deeply impressed and satisfied because you have it. And the same thing is true for you as well, Sarah Beckner. I'm always impressed with your pacing and your timing and your thoughtfulness and the things you say, but also between the two of you, the way in which the concrete event-based understanding of what to do is present all throughout what you do. And so I'm so deeply impressed, and I'm so proud to be sitting here with you all right now, because the two of you are exactly what I intended to participate in creating when I opened Oraculos to a wider audience back in 2018.
So I guess well, thank you. That's very heartfelt and means a lot. And also, one of the questions, and it feels like this is a good place to put this in here, is where do you see the future of astrology going? I mean, one of the things that you pulled Sarah and I into along your educational path is Uranian astrology, which I never thought I would have become involved in if it weren't for you encouraging us. Uh, and I'm just wondering, and from my perspective, I kind of see something along the lines of Uranian astrology in having no houses, essentially. I mean, not the same way that we hold them in traditional astrology, as well as
Mhm.
no signs, which I know is something that you keep pulling back from and really focusing on the hard aspect, planet to planet relationships, and also just the dial itself. And when I think about the future myself, I kind of picture this 360-degree dial with ways that we can interact with it that we can't even
Mhm.
imagine now. But I'm just wondering, that's my own idea of this, but what is your idea of the future of astrology? What does that look like for you? Is that embedded in the work that you're doing? Are you in the moment with it?
That's a very great question. I always have a future orientation. I always have a 5 to 10 year plan in whatever I'm doing. So, for example, this new batch of Oraculo students who are wrapping up PCA 1, which is our natal astrology semester, what I'm creating in them is in alignment with my current 5 year plan, basically. And also what we've done together in terms of our medical astrology training, Lisa, that we're currently doing and that I think we have one more semester left to do within that. That's also part of my 3 to 5 year plan of what I'm trying to create within our astrological community. And in the beginning, I thought that I was trying to move the world towards Uranian astrology proper as a specific way of practicing astrology. And that is no longer the truth. And the reason why that's no longer the truth is because Uranian astrology as a system doesn't even know where it wants to move itself. Uranian astrology as a system doesn't have an internal sense of direction to pull it forward anywhere, truthfully. And it's a wonderful system. And it took me a long time. And I actually think it took me teaching the Uranian astrology for practicing astrologers course that we recently wrapped up a couple of weeks ago for me to really sit with myself and ask myself how necessary I thought it was for all of these things and all of these tools and all of these practices to stay within one system of astrology. And today, I don't think it's necessary at all. And I didn't have that awareness before, or I didn't have that awareness at the start of our Uranian astrology program, but I have that awareness now. Because for a long time, I used to, be upset and I used to poo-poo on the people who were using pieces of Uranian astrology within the context of their astrological practice. Because in my mind, I said, hey, this is a complete system and it should be respected as a complete system and blah, 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 and all the things that comes with the righteousness of knowing that you're practicing a tradition. But today I get it. I completely understand why, within the context of Uranian astrology, we have some people who've taken the midpoint listing and ran with that alongside their traditional 12 houses astrology practice, and why you have other people who've taken the graphic ephemeris and ran with that, and why you have some people who've taken, I don't know what else people have taken, but all of these different pieces that people take, or why you have some people who they will go to the dial or go to the midpoint listing to look at a very specific topic. For example, love. And you go and you take a specific look at the sun, moon, midpoint and the love pictures that I know you both know in terms of exploring love. and then transpose that information back into their traditional astrology practice. At this point, I feel like that is what I am giving birth to. I'm giving birth to a hybrid that is very planetarily focused, and it's very planetarily focused from day one. That's what happened in the Medical Astrology Intensive that we hosted last year in Boston that Sarah attended. There was a very strong planetary focus. That's what happens in our medical astrology course, Lisa. There's a very strong planet to planet, hard aspect based focus, even within the traditional chart model. And in bringing in elements of Uranian astrology, whether it's the midpoint listing, whether it's the dial, whether it's the planetary picture for pregnancy or whatever, in bringing in Uranian astrology, I see it being brought in as an adjunct to a planet-based approach to natal delineation within a traditional, quote-unquote, pizza pie chart format. And the reason why I think that's important is because that pizza pie format has been around for at least 2,000 years. So I've been trying to feel within myself, Mychal, why are you still holding on to this pizza pie format when you have the fullness of Uranian astrology within yourself? You know how to teach it, you know how to do it. Why are you still gravitating back towards this pizza pie format of astrological interpretation? And the reason for that is because there's still magic within those bones. There's magic within the bones of traditional astrology that we have not yet exhausted. And so this statement within the Uranian astrology community that Uranian astrology is the new astrology, I think it's a fallacious statement. It's an incorrect statement because Uranian astrology is a wonderful tool of astrology. It teaches us to think. It teaches us to see hard aspects in a whole new way that we probably haven't seen them before. It teaches us to do quick math on the spot so that we can see new hard aspects that we didn't even know were important. It teaches us the importance of hard aspects to begin with. And it teaches us how to prioritize that when we're looking for concrete events within our chart. But it is a wonderful adjunct to what we've already been doing for the last 2,000 years. And I do not think that it's a replacement of what we've been doing for the last 2,000 years. So in answering your question, which I've never thought about before, I've never fleshed it out in that way, but in answering your question, I think that what I am specifically creating as far as the future of astrology is concerned is a generation of people, or the next generation of people who have a powerful understanding of the astrological aspect, who have a powerful understanding of charts delineation based on planet-to-planet relationships, not the Lord of my first house is doing this to the Lord of my fifth house, therefore, but who can do that same quality of interpretation purely based on the planets, and who also have this broader artillery of Uranian astrology tools that they can integrate into their larger planets-to-planet based natal approach to delineation, but to use those tools as a means of corroborating things that they would have already discovered in a more traditional format. And as I say that, it's clearer in my brain than it is coming out of my mouth, but I hope that that kind of makes some level of sense.
That was great. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, is there any concluding words you want to share, Mychal? We appreciate your time today, and I look forward to seeing your continued writings and how your career progresses as well. And I definitely want to stay involved. And I hope at some point you plan on teaching the Kabbalistic Tarot again.
Oh my gosh. I know I was going to ask, but
Hopefully, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, yes, I'll say this, and then I'll say something to conclude. But the teaching the Kabbalistic Tarot has really been the whole point of what I've been gearing up towards. And that book is looming over my shoulders as being something that needs to happen. And all of this writing, Mastering Traditional Astrology, writing the Horary Astrology and the Natal Promise book, writing the New Western Medical Astrology, all of these books are rites of passage for me to write the Kabbalistic Tarot book. And I'm I'm really ready and on the edge of my seat, and I'm dying to write the Kabbalistic Tarot book. But I feel like in order to really feel complete about the natal astrology series that I've, I guess, started at this point, I need to finish the natal astrology book, which needs to come out next. And then the revolutional astrology, which when I say revolutional astrology, I'm referring to solar returns, lunar returns, converse solar returns, demi-solar returns, embolismic lunations. All of those things is what I refer to as revolutional astrology, because there was no name for it before. And so anyway, so I think that I don't even know if I owe the world, but I owe myself writing the natal astrology book and getting that out of the way, then writing the revolutional astrology book, the solar return book, and getting that out of the way, and maybe writing a transits book and getting that out of the way, so that that part of my life that feels like it needs to produce, textbooks for natal astrology is completely fulfilled, so that when I do write the Kabbalistic Tarot book, it's because I don't owe the world anything else from a natal astrology perspective. So with the medical astrology book, I've already began this momentum, which is very natally based. And for me to write a tarot book right now would be very random, So I want to get those 2/3 books out of the way first. Natal astrology, solar returns, then the transits book, get them out of the way. And then I'll feel the freedom that I need to feel in order to really rededicate my life to tarot, because tarot is what brought me here. And I can't leave this planet without honoring that in written forms.
I can't wait for that book.
No pressure.
Well, thank you so much, Mychal. This has been really special and a real gift for both Sarah and I to be able to sit down and connect with you one-on-one and bring it into this podcast we've been working on for the past year or so. So we really appreciate all of your contribution to us becoming the astrologers that we are, and also spending this time with us. So
Definitely. Thank you all so much for having me. I really appreciate being here. And yeah, I'm really happy to see what you're both doing. And yeah, I'm just thinking about you, Lisa, and about you, Sarah, and just quickly going through 2/3 years in rapid fire in my brain, and I'm seeing how we've grown together, and I'm very happy to be here with you right now. So thank you so much for considering me and reaching out. I really feel so proud.
absolutely. Thank you, Mychal.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
As always, thanks for listening to Broadcast Astrology Insight for Humans. And if you're so inclined, like, follow, and subscribe, and please don't be a stranger.
Signing off for now. Until next time, humans, keep your gaze upwards on the stars and be well. We look forward to sharing more soon.